So this is an interesting topic, and I think if anybody's been doing keys at all this week, they probably already have experienced that keys are probably harder, maybe even harder than they should be. So my immediate questions before starting this video is, has it impacted you? Do you feel like it stopped you from getting what you want to get done? Like to me, the whole Keystone system, it's like it doesn't really matter how hard a specific level is because it's supposed to be about the climb. It's supposed to be about getting better over time, a gradual increase in progression and score. But does anybody feel like it's unfair? Because like some of the comments I've seen on this are just like, man, kind of disappointing. I mean, it's supposed to be hard, right? It's supposed to be competitive content. But let's get into what's actually going on here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So this is a post from like 3 days ago. Now this is Wowhead's busy season, so very easy for you to probably have missed some of this stuff. But basically, what this post says is it's telling people that it's a lot harder than they might realize. Okay, and I don't know why they even really make posts like this, but I'm glad they did because it made the second post seemingly possible. So, in Mythic Plus Season 3, dungeons seem to have been buffed by 46% base health, which is equal to 5 Keystone levels. Essentially makes 15 feel like a 20 from the previous season. Now I'm a little confused here because they keep saying things like 46%. They say double occasionally in the article, but they're not talking about tyrannical to tyrannical. They're talking about tyrannical to fortified, which is just silly. I mean, that's you don't like that's just really misleading. I think people are probably confused by that. A lot of people who are probably on the fence are like, "Oh, look, it's twice as hard. What the hell?" You know what I mean? It's like, no, it's not, dude. It's tyrannical. Yes, it's obviously higher health, but even fortified, you can still see almost 1 million more health there. So, um, but yeah, the reason is tyrannical. So it's like, why is it harder, right? So they're trying to explain that a little bit, at least. Tyrannical bosses have a massive health pool, while players haven't been able to gear up yet. The 30% scales further, and the increased base health will make bosses take a long time. This week's bosses have double the health of last week's bosses due to tyrannical. Yeah, but and that's like most of the reason. They have 30% more health. Like, okay. Anyway, but no, I think I don't know, this whole shards of domination thing. Like, if you're talking about last week, you're not talking about shards of domination. It's just a lot of weird, confusing stuff here, and I think a lot of people are getting confused by it. But here's the real topic for discussion. So this was published just yesterday or whatever, and you know what? This is a really interesting topic. So let's take a look at what it has to say here. The title is Mythic Dungeons Scale by an additional 30% health and damage when a Mythic Key starts. Okay. Whenever a Mythic Key starts, all Trajan bosses receive an undocumented 30% health and 15% damage buff from their Mythic 0 values. When we previously covered the Mythic scaling, we noted that the health pool of mobs has increased in Mythic Plus dungeons from Season 2 to Season 3 by 46% or 5 keystone levels. This is still true, but how the scaling occurs is much different from previous seasons. Base 0 scaling. As with every season, 0 dungeons are scaled by a base amount. For this season's transition, the amount appears to be 12% health, a much lower amount than previous seasons. The base damage scaling is unknown at this time. However, new to Season 3 is an undocumented buff, which applies around a 30% health and 15% damage buff to all mobs from their Mythic 0 values whenever a keystone begins. This buff cannot be seen anywhere in game. In previous seasons, the base Mythic 0 dungeon would receive the entire buff, which is usually around 3 to 4 keystone levels, and the keystone scaling would handle the rest. This 30% health buff is about equal to the previous seasons, as it's around 3.5 keys. However, combined with the base Mythic Plus scaling, or Mythic 0 scaling, this change results in a 46% health increase that we previously reported when comparing to Season 2. You can see this undocumented scaling easily on a 2 keystone. Now, this is great. This is why I love these articles. Wowhead does usually, they take the time to make sure the math is right, and I like this a lot with the pictures. Yeah, so you can actually see the difference between a 2 and a 0, or a 0 and a 2, obviously. So no modifier there at all because the key level is only 2. Pretty crazy. But anyway, this also applies to bosses. So on a Mythic 10 difficulty, an 883k health boss, which is 0, times 1.3 for Tyrannical, times 1.85 for the 10 scaling, equals 2.14 million. But then multiply by another 1.3 for this hidden buff, and you essentially get the boss health of a 2.7 million health of on a 10, up from 0. So, and then they're talking about damage too. Damage wise, this undocumented buff appears to be 15%, and they have more math there. So, conclusion: it's unclear whether or not this undocumented buff is a bug or not. No, I think it's not a. I mean, let's just keep reading. But in previous seasons, the scaling modifier between season was simply baked into Mythic Zero, and the keystone scaling and affixes would take care of the rest. With this undocumented change, the health differential between a 2 keystone and a base Mythic Zero is much larger than just tyrannical and fortified, and makes the number shown when you insert your key into a podium slightly misleading. And that's a good point, actually. I mean, honestly, that's a pretty good point. So that's evidence maybe for it not being right. This additional scaling factor could have been added to compensate for additional power systems coming soon, but it's impossible to say for sure. Those items being double legendary and tier sets. Either way, especially on this tyrannical week, players are going to have some really long boss fights, as the bosses have gained a lot of HP that is needed to DPS through. So we have the Wowhead equivalent of John Morgan here. Sounds like a bug to me, and explains why this week's Mythic Plus is almost unplayable. So this dude is kind of like a fucking reverse troll. He always all he ever says is shit like that. But this is a notion that I've heard from more than one person. A lot of people are really unhappy about keys right now, and to me, I don't really get it. I think too many people try to use it as like a means to an end, and they're not actually interested in the content. And I've been talking about this for years. Don't do hard content if you're not interested in being challenged by it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just stop. Like, it's not worth it. But to be honest, like, dude, a 15 is really not that hard. Like, in terms of survival, it's not anywhere near as hard as it should, as the people are making it look. I've had some really bad groups that are just like, I actually genuinely don't know if they've ever done some of these bosses on any hard difficulty before, because it seems like they have no idea what's difficult about the boss. And so that kind of gets me to this point here. Like, I have to say this as a warning to you guys. If you guys were struggling to do 15s last season, or like you just did 15s and you didn't push past that, you can't do 15s right now, man. Like, you just can't, unless you have a group, a guild or a group of friends. Please do not pug, man. I have to say this. I have to put my foot down on this. Like, it's very unfair. All these people who are trying to pug into groups that they are like, you're effectively trying to pug into a 20 something, and I don't think it's just like 5 keystone levels. I think this is something vastly different. It's obviously that the math here shows one way, but it's like, to me, it's like a whole different situation, because there's a little bit of psychology involved too. You think 15 is a certain thing, and then you don't like realize what that is until you get in there. And so that's the difference. Like 20, it's like, oh, this is a 20, bro. You know what I mean? But and then when you do a 15, everybody just kind of takes it like lackadaisical. So I think there's even a little psychology at work here, because these challenges inside these dungeons are much different than I've ever encountered. And I play with a lot of bad groups. Like, I've done 20s with a lot of bad groups. There's clips on the channel of it. But I've never really seen this kind of ineptitude that I've seen this week in some of these players. It's like they're genuinely seeing these mechanics for the first time. And yeah, I think, I don't think the scaling is the only reason for that. So I genuinely, if you're upset about this, just realize that, the facts are, first of all, you're probably out of your league right now. Is it a bug? I think absolutely not. I think in one way or the other, they intended this to happen. It is weird that it's being handled like this, but I don't know. This whole like digging into the game like this is not really good for anybody, I feel like. And when you start calling things like this a bug, it's like, dude, it's just hard. Okay. Like, obviously we're going to get an insane amount of power, right? Like, does anybody else? And so there's some interesting comments on that too, like where people are saying like, this is only a problem because they're like, this nonsense word, time gating power. It's like, fuck are you talking? I mean, this is how it works. This is how the game works, right? You're not going to be very powerful the opening weeks. That's just how it works. Regardless, like, you could just, honestly, you could not even get tier, right? Don't even get tier or the double orange. Go get regular gear. Go get to 270 something item level. You think 15s are still going to be hard? I mean, like, come on, like, let's be serious here. So people are already doing, I mean, let's take a look at this. The last time I checked, they are already doing Mythic Plus 21 and stuff. Look at this. 21s. Dude, 21. I mean, I get it's Necrotic Wake and Plaguefall, but Dude, there's a whole bunch of 20s. Blood DK. Look at these blood DKs. Look at these. All these blood DKs. This is crazy, dude. So tell me what's hard about a 15? And so then people start to say like, "Oh, this guy says, yeah, groups are timing 20s and above." But then this guy says, remember, the top groups are not the majority. People really need to keep that in mind. No, 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 no. He's talking about 20, right? You're talking about 15. Like, you don't have to be a top group to finish a 15, right? I mean, I've done probably like 25, maybe. I don't even really know. I've done a lot of 15s this week or higher. And honestly, the only reason they fail is because people like you are like, hey, I'm not getting paid to play this game, so I can't possibly do these fights right. It's like, just stop making excuses for yourself, man. Just go get better. It's really that easy. Like, it's not that hard. This content is not actually that difficult. Like, honestly, these keys are not the only hard part about these keys. Well, so there's some new stuff happening. Right? Obviously, Tazavesh, very difficult key, and it's been nerfed a ton of times. It's probably going to get nerfed even more next week once we see Fortified. But yeah, that's hard, right? Obviously, people are learning it for the first time, but it's also hard, and it's been nerfed a bunch. That's proof of that. But also the affix. The affix is overwhelming at times. Like, if you don't know the fights very well as it is, and the affix is doing all kinds of crazy stuff on these bosses, it can be pretty difficult. And I think it's occupying a lot of their mental bandwidth when they're fighting bosses, so they're getting frustrated. But if after you've learned all those things, and we're now doing dungeons that you've been doing hopefully for the last year, you still find it difficult? I mean, like, let's be serious here. It's really not. You know what I mean? The only actual hard part is the kind of overwhelmingness of all the new stuff. And I don't really find. I think, like, if all you're looking for is a completion, you got to ask yourself some questions here. You know what I mean? You really do. But that being said, like, it doesn't really even matter, dude. Like, just get a 12 done. Like, a 12's fine. Like, what does it give? Like 270 or something? Like, dude, that's huge. This is a huge item level upgrade still. Anything you get from a 12 or higher is going to be an upgrade in that vault, right? So I just think, people, just, if you're finding yourself discouraged, or you're finding yourself in a position where you feel like it's unfair. Like, I asked that question at the start of the video, like, anybody find it unfair? I mean, this is just a good learning moment for you then. I think that's a good way to look at it. These keys are not like, you can do keys with like 3 people. Like, they're not that tightly tuned. The timer is the thing that usually makes it that tightly tuned. So if all you're after is gear, just take it slow. You know what I mean? Just do the mechanics. As long as the healer is not going to go out of mana after 3 minutes of fighting a boss, there's no reason you can't kill bosses. And the ones I find hard right now would be like Mists, because that first boss is such a wall, and the affix really makes that much harder. That one's definitely a lot harder. I mean, like, dungeons I find really easy, like halls, spires. I honestly, I kind of think streets is really easy. If you do Gambit at lower key levels, like, the only reason Gambit's hard is because these bosses are just like insane, and you really have to burn through big health pools of them. But if you do it on like a 12, it's not hard at all. You can easily do that. You just need to know the mechanics on the second boss, especially, and you'll be good. First boss, super easy now, super easy. But yeah, I mean, maybe other dungeons kind of like probably Plaguefall really hard this week just for completion groups. But yeah, I mean, theater, I can't really think of any bad issues other than the first boss and Mist. So, and then, like, Necrotic Wake, like, we did this a couple times now, and it's just like, just use the weapon well, man. Like, that's what they're there for. I don't really know how else to say it. Just play well, and if you have any questions, let me know, man. This is why I make videos. This is the exact reason. Like, I don't want people to think they can't play a video game successfully. It's just so false. Like, it's unbelievably false. You can do anything in this game that you put your mind to, dude. And I get it. Not everybody has a lot of time. I think the big thing is time. And so, I'm sure there's comments where people are saying like, oh, I don't have 5 hours to spend in dungeons this week, bro. It's like, well, then you're not going to get the 15s done for your vault. And that's a life. That's something you live with. You know what I mean? Like, I learned that lesson when I was 17 years old. I wanted to play this game. I was inspired to play it better, and I didn't have the time to look where I am now. You know what I mean? But it's sad. Maybe it's sad. I don't know. People think it's lame or something, but I organized my whole life around getting better at this game. It's a perfect outlet for progression for me. And, I've been feeling that same way about golf recently. It's just like, when you find that thing, your mind craves it. Like, we live a very nerfed life in 2022. So finding challenge and finding something that could replicate what life used to be like, used to be challenging, and you had to fight and live and die by those choices. You know what I mean? So just, let's just get better, I think is the way to put it. So let me know what you guys think. I'd really like to hear your thoughts, especially all different types of players. If you're somebody who is new or you're somebody who's experienced, I'd love to hear it either way. So let me know what you guys think. I think for me, keys have been, they've been harder than I expected, but honestly, the only actual hard part, so I'm not doing 20s. You know what I mean? I don't need to do 20s, right? I can easily do 15s and feel progression there. The only hard part is that so many people are coming to these keys just completely clueless, and that's a shame because I feel like there's a lot of resources out there. Even if you're not using mine, there's a lot of resources out there to not come so clueless and to not spend an hour and a half on the other side on your birthday there. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Yeah, that's right. See you in the next one.